I'm Daniel, the past life regressionist, and it's time to begin.
Lift off and the clock has started.
This is Timeless Spirituality. Enjoy each and every time.
Well, hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Timeless Spirituality. It is the season finale. Yeah, I can hardly believe it myself. Well, no, I can believe it because I'm the one who chose to make this season finale. It just felt like a good bookend to the season to really encapsulate the feel of what I believe my first season was. And I'm really, really happy with it. I'm really happy with the way things turned out. So what's going to happen in season 2? I'm going to up my game a little bit. It's going to be really cool. I've recorded some really cool episodes so far that I'm going to release in the season 2 batch. Just expect something new and different. It's going to be really cool. And a lot of the same, but still different in its own right. And I'm really looking forward to it. But I just want to thank everyone for being here on this journey with me. It's really something. Yeah, that's all I can say is it's really something. All right, so for today's season finale episode, it is a continuation basically of last week's episode because they were both recorded at the same time. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, I recommend starting with that one because it's touched upon a little bit in this one. Not a lot, but a little bit. But it's kind of cool when the two go hand in hand. Yeah. I'm going to be taking next week off, so the show will return in 2 weeks. Mark your calendars for May 7th. Going to be co-hosting a workshop. More details coming, but mark your calendars. And starting on April 15th, I'm going to be raising my prices for one-on-one sessions. So if you guys want to get in at my prices right now, just go ahead and book before April 15th, even if the session takes place after the 15th. Just make sure you book by then. And with that said, if you would like to book a regression with me to discover who, when, and where you have been throughout time, you can reach me on Instagram at The Past Life Regressionist or my website, thepastliferegressionist.com. And now, it is time to begin. Jenny, welcome back. How you doing?
Great, Daniel. How are you?
I'm good. So
Good.
You just want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself again, just to remind them of who Jenny is?
Oh boy. I'm a video editor and I read tarot and a baby astrology student. And I was born in Los Angeles and I've lived in the UK for the last 10 years.
So Jenny had some questions for me and she asked if we could do an Ask Daniel segment. And I thought it was really cool. So Jenny, I'm going to hand it over to you. You know how the floor.
My goodness. Okay, I have so many questions.
So wait, I have to bestow you as what will we call you? The guest host of Timeless Spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone, this is your guest host for the day.
Hi, everyone.
She was doing an air clap.
I was imagining the applause track. Thank you. I am so honored and I'm so excited. This is one of my new favorite things to talk about. And I have questions, not just from my experience with the regression, but from the dozens of maybe like 100 interviews you've done. And what I've seen from a few things that I've listened to from Dolores Cannon and Brian Weiss and other kind of past life resources that I've been looking into since we've connected and I've gone down the rabbit hole. So are you ready to start?
I am.
All right. My first question is, what would you say is the lens of the moral perspective on the lives? Which person is determining the moral value of goodness or badness of a lifetime? Or is there a seemingly moral neutral perspective?
Now, when you say which person is deciding what the moral goodness is, are you referring to the person who's having the regression?
Yeah, is it the person who's having the regression, or is it the life that they're the person that of the life that they're embodying, or is it like a higher self kind of thing?
I think it's a combination of all three, to be frank,
Ooh.
because well, one, I think that there's something universal about what's right and wrong. Stealing is not right. Hurting someone.
Yeah,
not
but do
right.
they know, do you like know that in the life that you're doing it?
So I think that's where the other two come into play is oftentimes when you're having a regression, you can distinguish between your feelings that you have as, say, Jenny, or the
Mhm.
feelings that you're having as that person, let's just call you Francesca.
Right.
That you are able to understand where Francesca is coming from. And maybe Francesca is doing bad things and maybe she's aware of it. Maybe she's not. But you, Jenny, can say, oh, I'm stealing right now. That's not a good thing. That's bad. And maybe Francesca knows that stealing is bad, but she does it because she has to. Or maybe Francesca's a psychopath and doesn't realize it's wrong what she's doing. But you have that ability in that moment to step into that role and understand where you were coming from in the past life and view it through the lens of the way that you see it, your perspective.
So you think those lives come up as a lesson to give a new perspective on this kind of challenge or moral ambiguity of that life, or it depends on the situation?
I think it depends on the situation because it could be about what needs to be released. Because you could be someone who's never stolen a dime in your life as Jenny, but as Francesca, that's the way you, by the way, also, I don't remember you being named Francesca in any past life, so it's just coming up as an example.
Yeah.
I don't know why Francesca came. Well, maybe you were Francesca in a past life. I think it's ultimately about what needs to be released and what needs to be learned just in any given life. So if there's a perspective that needs to be gifted to you so you can make changes in your life, then I believe it will come that way. But it could also be just an understanding of why you have such an aversion to stealing. Because on a soul level, you know it was wrong and that you stole from others in a past life. And as I'm saying this, I'm like, wait, this seems oddly familiar to some of my past lives where I feel I have this aversion to stealing because in past lives I stole a lot.
I was just thinking the same, that I had a past life where I felt really special. And now I feel like an aversion to feeling special.
I mean, the one where you were the prophet?
A royal advisor. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be that. I also would want to allow for the possibility that there are other lives in there, which would explain why you have an aversion to feeling special.
Absolutely.
But it's entirely possible. So I guess to go back and answer the initial question, I believe it's all three. But
Yeah, that makes sense.
I believe that there's just something universal about right and wrong.
It is a very odd sensation, experiencing quote unquote someone else's emotions as your own during a regression, which was one of the experiences I had with a very intense grief experience that definitely wasn't mine, but it felt like mine. And I was experiencing it through another lifetime, which is very interesting. What happens when a client gets stuck and can't experience anything? Or does that even happen?
Stuck, yes. I've only had it happen once where someone didn't experience anything. But when that happened, they said to me before the session, this isn't going to work. Nothing is going to happen. And she did the session because her sister wanted her to do the session. So I almost feel like she went through with it just to say to her sister, this is a bunch of bullshit.
You definitely have to be open to it.
Mm-hmm. Because you're fully in control of the experience. And if you don't allow it to happen, it's not going to happen. Now, with regards to people getting stuck, what I often see is people get stuck when they try to control the experience, when they have an expectation of the way that an experience is supposed to go. And if they don't just allow the process to unfold, then that's where they get stuck. Now, there are ways to become unstuck, but it's about letting go. And this is something that I even have an issue with myself when I do sessions or when I have them done for me. Sometimes I don't see anything, which is an indication to me, oh, I'm trying to control this right now. So then I say, you know what? I've got to just let this happen and allow it to happen. And once I allow it to happen, it happens. You know, even with the higher self portion, when I have my own sessions, I have to remind myself as I'm being counted in for the higher self to come through, I have to say, you need to allow this to happen right now. You need to allow this to happen because I don't like relinquishing control. So it's that constant reminder of, I need to allow this to happen. So yeah, people do get stuck. And I believe it's just because there's that expectation that's placed or too much control over the situation. And it's then a matter of getting you out of your head and relinquishing that control. But that second part only happens if you allow control to be relinquished, because at no point will I ever be able to control you. And even when you relinquish that control, I'm still not controlling you. You're still in control, but you're allowing the process to unfold.
Yeah. So in my experience, I had 2 lifetimes where I ended up in this limbo space. And I'm not saying that was necessarily stuck, but do you experience people that experience a limbo or a waiting space in their regressions?
It happens from time to time. And I know we didn't bring this up in the first episode that we did, but I have to wonder, do you see any parallels to your life right now when it comes to that limbo space popping up twice?
Yeah, but how is that helpful?
Think about what you saw at the end of the second one. Where did you end up being taken?
Dead.
Okay, well, not that far down the line, because that's what happens for all of us.
Sorry.
So you first saw that limbo space after the life where you were the pompous prophet, we'll say.
Okay. Those are your words, not mine.
Yeah, I'll say it.
But I'll take it.
And the second one was the high priestess one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you saw yourself in the desert with the priestess, but then you were taken where?
To like an oasis.
So
Well, it was like a watering hole. I wouldn't call it an oasis.
well, you can dress it down however you want, but you started in the desert, and then you ended up somewhere that wasn't the desert. And I think it's what parallels pop up from your life now. And you're in a limbo space right now. For all intents and purposes, you really are in the desert.
Yeah. And I definitely looked up the kind of meanings of those things afterwards. And of course, came up with like Jesus's 40 days in the desert or Moses' 40 years in the desert. And these are crisis of faith moments. And I'm definitely in a crisis of faith moment. So that resonates as well. Okay, next question. Is there a correlation or a connection between our past lives and ancestral DNA or ancestral trauma? And, just how many threads of different life experiences are living in our bodies right now?
I believe that it's possible for there to be a thread between ancestral trauma and past lives, but that would indicate that you are reincarnating into a bloodline that you've been in before. And I don't believe that's always the case. Well, I don't believe that to really ever be the case that often, although I have seen it. But I believe more than not we jump around. Then again, I guess if you want to go back to the dawn of humans, if we're going by Darwin's theory of evolution, then we all kind of stem from the same thing anyways. So I guess we're all just jumping around in our own DNA bloodlines there. But I also believe that it doesn't matter. And with that, I mean, a problem is a problem. I don't care if it's coming from ancestral trauma. I don't care if it's coming from past life issues. If there's a problem, address it, fix it. My astrology teacher, his name is Jim Scher. I was having a conversation with him in his living room one day. And we were just talking about fixing problems because I was always searching for meaning to any issue and getting hung up on its roots. What's the meaning of this and that, and this and that, blah, 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 blah. Like, that was me. That was me. I'd be a fool to say that's not me now, but it's much more diminished at this point. And he pointed to a chair, more specifically the upholstery on the chair, and he said to me, a tear appears in that chair. What do? I say, you find out how the tear appeared. He's like, no, you fix the chair. I said, that's ridiculous. Because if you don't find out how the chair was torn, then it's probably going to happen again. He says, no, you fix the chair. And Mr. Taurus, me, was very stubborn. I wouldn't back down on that one. I refused to see what he was saying at the time, which is if a problem arises, fix it. And in the act of fixing the problem, you will understand the problem. Because while I searched for meaning elsewhere to get to the root of the problem, what I was really doing was spiritual bypassing. I was circumventing looking at the hard truths, which was in order to fix something, sometimes you just need to look it right in the eye.
Amen.
So I bring this up because I believe that a lot of people get too hung up on those terms. However you get there, That's all that matters. I don't care how you get from point A to point B, but just fix the problem.
Yeah, and past life stuff will come up when it's time to do that, and ancestral stuff might come up when it's time to do that. Like, you can trust the timing of problems coming up on their own.
You know, for me, when it comes to looking back at the lineage of my past lives and the possible correlation to my ancestral lineage in a biological sense, is one, looking at the skin color. And I guess you could say I'm white in this life. I'm not pale white. I'm not pasty white. Got a little bit of tan in my skin, maybe a little olive color. So if I look at all the past lives where there was more of that correlation, of course, yeah, there could have, 28th great grandmother or whatnot may have been a much darker shade. I may have come from more pasty white, but I could get hung up on looking at those past lives and thinking, have I reincarnated into one of those bloodlines? Am I one of my own descendants 30 times removed? It's really, really cool to think about. But how much is that taking me away from looking at whatever it is that came up in that life and the pattern and correlation it has to my life now and what needs to be addressed now? That's probably a very boring answer.
No, that makes sense, because I just think there will be, especially depending on what kind of group or DNA you are incarnated in this life, it will very much vary how directly affected you are by an ancestral or a cultural, trauma that could still be playing. I mean, I'm a very white person, so other than a long, long ancestry of poverty, I don't have nearly the same kinds of ancestral traumas that other groups have.
Right.
So I guess it depends on what you're facing in this life and what you're called to practice on.
Ultimately, I have nothing but admiration for people who want to address these issues. That's, at the end of the day, that's all it comes down to, is I have nothing but admiration and respect for someone who wants to work on these things.
Yeah.
So I don't want it to come off as if I'm as if I'm wagging my fingers saying, oh, this, that, why, it's worthless what you're doing. No, it's not worthless. But doesn't matter what it's labeled as much as it matters looking at the chair, acknowledging that it needs to be fixed, and fixing it.
Yeah. Cool. I have a couple practical questions about your practice.
Awesome.
This is the first time I've heard of sort of a therapeutic practice, I don't know if that's what you would call it, that basically spans the whole day. Is this something that's normal for the quantum healing technique? What, did I get the name right? Quantum healing hypnosis technique, or is this something that you kind of adopted for your own practice?
That is normal for QHHT, which is the quantum healing hypnosis technique. For BQH, which is beyond quantum healing, those are both modalities I'm certified in. BQH, I wouldn't say is as extensive as QHHT is in terms of time. However, the beauty of BQH is that it allows you to incorporate whatever you want into your practice, whereas QHHT is very set. There is specific steps that you must follow and must take, protocols that must be executed, and you are not supposed to deviate from those at all. BQH, it's like if you read something in a book and you like it, you can incorporate it. If you hear another practitioner friend of yours who practices another modality that tried something out and it works, you can try it. So BQH, that's the beauty of it, is that it just allows the practitioner to incorporate whatever they want. So that is something that I incorporate from QHHT, is spending more time for the duration of the session. Because would it be easier if I wrapped every session up in 2 hours? Yeah, it would be much easier. I could go on with my day. But ultimately, is that benefiting the person who I'm working with? Yeah,
and
but probably not.
Flies too.
But yeah, but not to the extent of what could happen if the proper time is spent. But then there are also other modalities that I'm not certified in, where it's an hour session. You jump in, the practitioner says, all right, we're going to do this for an hour, and then I'm going to bring in my next person. We'll see what we can cover. But I need to know who you are and know where you're coming from in order to spot the patterns. If I don't have an understanding of your current life, which is what the majority of the time is spent during the pre-session on, is who you are and where you've been, then I can't help you to the extent that I could if I know all those things. So, yes, to your question, I think.
Yeah, so the session I had with you was over Zoom since I'm on the other side of the world. So that I presume that means you use the Beyond Quantum Healing.
Yeah.
What would the difference be if I was there in person for a session? Would that revert to the quantum healing hypnosis technique, or would it depend on the day and what we wanted to get out of the session?
Am I answering as an Aquarius rising or not as an Aquarius rising?
You're answering as Daniel.
I believe that QHHT is an amazing process. I believe it is nearly perfect, but I also believe in progress. So I guess what I'm ultimately saying is that while a session may start as QHHT in person, because QHHT can only be done in person, I may call an audible midway and switch it to BQH because I feel that there's something else that I need to incorporate that I feel would work better. And the second I do that, it is no longer a QHHT session. Now, I charge the same for both.
Right.
But the name just changes.
Is there a fundamental difference on the client's experience doing it in person versus over Zoom?
I wouldn't say that there's a fundamental difference, but I think that there's always going to be something different about sitting in a room with someone.
Mm-hmm.
I may do maybe 1 out of 30 of my sessions now are done in person. 1 out of 20, 1 out of 30. And I don't find there to be a difference between the outcome. Then again, how could I really know that if I'm not doing it with them in person? But I have tremendous success with virtual sessions. But yeah, of course, I think there's always going to be something different about sitting in a room with someone and feeling their presence there as opposed to through a screen.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you know when I get back to LA.
Deal.
Okay. I don't know if
Wait, I take it back. Now that I thought about it, I don't charge the same thing for QHHT and BQH because my prices are different for in person. So just want to clarify that because the QHHT is in person.
Yeah, but it's like a nominal difference, isn't it?
It's nominal, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if you feel like answering this, but how is your energy affected by sessions? And do you have any kind of ritual around either protecting your energy or how you show up with your energy for the sessions?
Oh, my energy is definitely impacted by it.
Yeah.
The beauty of doing sessions at home, doing virtual sessions, is that I'm at home. But I think a misconception that I've never really addressed that some people may have is that I just roll out of bed and do a session, which is definitely not the case. Now, I don't know how much my autoimmune issues factor into this, but I don't know about for you, but when I wake up in the morning, I'm not springing out of bed.
There's no morning for me. I'm not a morning person.
I generally start my sessions around 11 a.m., but if I'm starting my sessions at 11 a.m., my alarm is set for hours before that. I need the time to first become coherent, which really, it doesn't matter how long you sleep. You can sleep for 10 hours and still wake up in the same condition as if you slept for 6 hours. It's a matter of having that proper time to wake up. And then, of course, got to get ready. But then I've also got to allow myself time before the session to just sit and really just, okay, here we go. So, there's a grounding process that takes place first. Even at a distance, different people's energy affects me different ways. You can still feel that energy. And some people, it almost feels as if they have an iron grip around me during the session. There's just something that is very stagnant about their energy, or very, I don't think controlling would be the right word, but where they place energetic blocks for whatever reason, it may be, it's probably being done unconsciously. So I'm almost walking up that hill at a steeper incline, and it becomes exhausting. And I think also with the sessions is I've got to be on every second.
Yeah.
Because if I zone out, then I'm missing key details. Now that's in the pre-session, and that's during the session as well.
Yeah.
After the session, what I'm getting better at now is allowing myself time to process what happened during the session, because I would say that I was a little pompous in the first couple of years that I was a practitioner in respect to what I believed my capacity was to receive heavy and traumatic information, because I hear many horrific things, not only from someone's past life, but from their current life as well. I mean, just absolutely horrific things.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much it was affecting me until, I mean, I'd say it was within the last year or two when it finally hit that point where I just said, wow, I may be strong, but I'm not as strong as I've been telling myself. Because what I would do is I would just jump from doing a session into whatever else it may have been. I'll often joke now that once a session is done, then I'm just going and making dinner. Like my mind will switch that way where I'm not affected by what happened during the session. But when I'm making dinner, I'm also processing at the same time because I'm not making elaborate meals. Maybe making a salad, throw some chicken in there. Not a lot of prep involved.
Yeah.
And I'm a creature of habit, so there aren't many dishes that I prepare for myself. So I'm a creature, you know, it's like riding a bike when I'm doing that. So I'm not putting much thought into in the prep of a meal as much as just decompressing from what has come up during a session. And energetically, it's also understanding that I'm not Superman, in that in a time sense, other people may be working much longer hours than I am and working 5 consecutive days. I can tell you the times that I've tried that have not ended well for me. And I don't know if that's even necessarily just because of some fatigue issues. I believe it's because of some of the stuff is just so heavy. And if you don't allow yourself that time to just, wow, that was heavy, I believe you're just setting yourself up to really get smacked in the face.
Yeah. Definitely sounds like there's support and processing needed for that stuff.
And I also find myself doing Reiki on myself during sessions. And I've got my hand over my solar plexus, trying to move everything from there.
Yeah. So you're a Reiki practitioner too.
I am, but I don't facilitate Reiki because I find it to be a little boring. I mean, it's great, but as a practitioner, just standing there with my hands over someone, it's not as stimulating. Because, you know, you've done a session with me once. Well, I love the pre-session because I get to understand you in ways that most people never get the opportunity to, because you never really get to sit down with someone and tell them your whole life story. And then I get to know you and your past life selves and see how that affects your current life and how it correlates to the things that were brought up during the pre-session. So I find that to be absolutely fascinating. And then during your actual session, I switch into investigator mode because I never know what's going to happen during a session. So I'm gathering the details as you're saying them to me and then trying to piece everything together and understand, okay, this is what's happening over here. This is how it may link up. So what question am I going to ask now in order to move the session forward? So that's just so much fun for me. Yeah. Like Reiki, it's awesome.
It's not your vibe.
But just standing there with the hands, I can't use my brain as much.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I actually had recorded my pre-session, like, you know, therapy session or whatever it is, tell me about your life kind of thing. And one of the things I found really interesting was when I listened back, I was like, I sound like...
Wait, you recorded that?
Yeah, I had like a backup of just my stuff.
How'd I do? Because that's the one I usually don't. I never record that part of the session. So
I think it was just my audio. So I don't think I even had the questions that you were asking me.
Oh, okay.
During the preset. But I was listening back to what I was telling you, and I sounded like a bitter 15-year-old or a 15-year-old version of myself. And I was like, that must have just been the part of me that needed to come out that day and tell things that way. Because I was like, whoa, that even just listening to that, it's like that was me, and I was totally conscious and awake, but that is like the inner child piece of me that needed to come out and tell its story that day before you'd even done any of your woo-woo magic stuff.
I mean, I don't do woo-woo magic. I just ask the questions. I think that's one of the reasons why one, the way that I was taught is that it's not part of the process to record the pre-session, which I have no problem with you recording it. Like, that's totally fine. But I think the reason why I don't record it is because I believe that that's where, I don't want to say the ugliest things come out, but I think that those are the things that people would be most mortified by if for whatever reason someone ended up hearing their recording. You know, if I recorded it for you and sent it to you and somehow someone else, whatever it may be, that's where.
I just have no shame. So I don't.
Which is cool. But if it helps you, like, I have no problem with that. But I think it's for that reflection that came up for you. That's awesome. Like that. Yeah. That's a lot of the pre-sessions. Just the ugly stuff comes out then. But it's necessary.
It was a little. I mean, and I'm used to listening to myself talk because of just some of the work that I've done. But like, it was interesting to hear the tone of that and be like, wow, that was an interesting way of saying things.
Well, I think that's what's most important also for the pre-session is that's where the awareness starts to come into play, is because you're saying those things. Because well, I don't think everyone has a self-awareness that you have to acknowledge that, but it could be the simplest thing once they just hear themselves say it and it's coming up from the depths, because once they get into that just unfettered stream of consciousness, things will just start coming to the surface for them.
You think the stream of consciousness is less embarrassing than having a totally conscious recapping of your life stuff?
I lump them both into the same category since they're both happening in a conscious state. Right. But once you just kind of go on that roll, I'll give you a good example. So I brought up my astrology teacher, Jim Scher, earlier. And there was another class of his that I took. It was called Contemplation and Inquiry. He called it a meditation class. But not in the conventional sense of sitting there and just being quiet. It's because in contemplating and inquiring, you will naturally come to conclusions about yourself, or things will be brought to light through the act of inquiring. And there was this exercise we did called the dyad, which was so uncomfortable, but so beautiful. But while you're in it, it can be very uncomfortable, but also there's a release that takes place. And at the basic level, what the dyad is, let's just say if it were you and I doing the exercise, we would be sitting right across from each other. And I would say to you, please tell me what is coming up for you now. And then you would speak for 5 minutes. I'm not able to inquire while you're speaking. I can't ask questions. I just need to sit there and receive. Once you're finished, you will then say to me, please tell me what is coming up for you. And then I will speak for 5 minutes. And this was at a time when I was more afraid to look at my shadows. Mm-hmm. And I remember one time the question was asked to me, please tell me what is coming up for you now. And I went on this rant about a movie I was at the night before. I don't like going to sold out theaters because I don't like people. And when which is ironic for what I do, that I'm all about helping people. There's always going to be one moron in there who's going to be chewing too loud or just not shutting up or whatever it may be. So when I go to movies, I like to go to a matinee on a weekday.
I hear
the movie's been out for a while. So eliminating the possibility of it being full. At this point, this was in, 2017 or 2018. It had been 5 years since I had been at a movie at night. Not even on a weekend, but just at night. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try to not be so rigid. Go to this movie and see how it is. And, okay, we're going to do this. But, of course, there were a bunch of annoying people in there. Well, the person next to me took their shoes off. The person behind me was kicking my seat. It's like I turned around and said, hey, would you mind, not kicking the seat? And she says, I'm not doing that. It's amazing that it stopped after I brought it up. But, okay, fine. If you can't own up to it, I get it. But I was bringing all of this up during the dyad. And this and that, and people chewing too loud, and this and that. And then I ended up somewhere completely different. I don't remember where it was that I ended up. I think maybe at that point we were doing 10 minutes because the exercise kept going up in increments. But it was amazing where I ended up. And it was somewhere completely different from that movie theater, but I had started there. And things just started coming up, and then I came to an awareness, which I wish I could remember what it was. But it was one of those aha moments. Aha, I get it. Now I see it. So I think that's what comes up during that pre-session is even though you're conscious while you're speaking, things will just start coming up for you.
So if you have a repeat client that comes back, do you still do that pre-session?
Yes, it just looks different though. It's more of a recap of what's been going on for them since, what's coming up for you now. Then it's going over the questions that they've brought in, which those questions will naturally turn into stories because they're going to need to fill me in on what's going on with regards to someone new in their life. Or so I'll need to hear that whole story. But we just don't go over the whole timeline of the life.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. What, in your opinion, what is the purpose or use of holding on to past life pain? Why isn't it resolved when our life resets? I'm more talking about physical pains that happen, like if you die a certain way and you come back into the world with a pain that releases. I mean, the interpersonal stuff makes sense to me to learn interpersonal lessons and stuff, but what's really the lesson in another pain? It seems like you should have some kind of refreshment or healing between lives that takes place. And what's your understanding of what happens with that?
I have no understanding of it. All I have is thoughts. So
tell us your thoughts then.
Because, I mean, I say that because how can anyone have an understanding of that?
Just from your millions of experiences with clients.
Right, but you know what I mean by that. How can anyone have an understanding as much as just a belief? Which I'm going to bring up my astrology teacher, Jim Scher, again. I believe the most valuable lesson that he ever taught me was simply the difference between believing and knowing. Once I understood that many of the beliefs that I held I was treating as knowings or facts instead of beliefs, I was much more uptight. But then taking a step back and seeing, oh, these are just beliefs, I was able to naturally relax. So how can anyone actually know that?
Yeah.
With that said, I'll tell you the beliefs that I have about it.
Thank you.
Have you heard of the holographic universe theory?
In passing.
So when people talk about our universe being a virtual reality, what they're alluding to is the holographic universe theory. Now, I think it's too simplistic to label it as such, as a virtual reality, because the explanation that I tend to hear after that is someone will bring up The Sims, that game that we used to play 20 years ago, where you control their lives and they're just walking through the steps of really not having much free will.
Right.
And I don't believe that that's the case. I do believe in the holographic universe theory and that this is a simulation to a certain extent, but I don't believe that humans have the capacity to understand the complexity of what that really means. So all we can do is understand it through the lens of what we have an understanding of, which is virtual reality. I believe that astrology, by the way, I'm going somewhere with this. I believe that astrology is the CPU of our solar system and beyond, because, you know, the zodiac is more so the stars that are out there in our galaxy. But I believe, that astrology is the CPU which sets into motion the energies that are at play for us to, I don't want to say act out our karmic lessons, but to just set events into motion for us to learn on a karmic level. Do I see any use in us holding over our past life traumas? No, none at all. The past life physical issues? No, I don't see any logical reason why we should have to carry those over if we die and it's reset. I don't see any logical reason for that. Unless if we're just picking up from where we left off. Because I don't know if you ever played video games when we were kids.
Oh, yeah.
One of the most frustrating things to me about playing Mario, especially the original one, is, you may got a couple mushrooms as lives, but once you went through those, you were done. And then you had to start over at the very beginning. But then video games progressed to a place where you could pick up from where you left off, still in the same life, because I don't know about any games that have to do with reincarnation. And then you beat the game. But what if it's a matter of picking up where we left off because something was unresolved? And maybe even on a karmic level, we may just see that we were, that we had our legs crushed in one life, but we may not know the karmic events that were set into motion in a previous life before what we witnessed in a past life regression. So we may never see the origin of it, but just the most tangible expression that we can have to understand our current circumstances. So if you die, then that's it in that given life. And the lesson remains unchecked, unlearned. So at some point, it's going to need to be picked up. Now, I don't see any logical reason for that, but maybe there's not logic that's incorporated into the fold here. Maybe it's something we can't comprehend as humans.
Mm-hmm.
It's annoying as shit. I'll tell you that.
It just feels like it would be, I mean, it doesn't make any sense anyway, but to say it would be like a cumulative thing, and you would just eventually you'd never be a functioning human if you had every ailment that you ever had from all the ways that you've died. But I guess that would be assuming linear time or a cumulative effect.
I also think that we probably, I mean, I can say this even for myself, someone who's had about 35 of my own regressions at this point.
Oh,
and I'll continue to have my own regressions. Even if I continue to have them for the rest of my life, which I hope is another 70 years, I'm still only going to get a snapshot of the totality of the experience of everywhere I've been. Let's say, so just because I may have an awareness of some of those things that I'm working on karmically, that doesn't take away from someone who has never had a past life regression, nor will ever have one, nor have any conscious awareness of the karma that they're working on. So I believe that karma is not eye for an eye, that we are resolving karma through each incarnation, even if we're not consciously aware of it. So I bring that up because I don't know if it's necessarily the accumulation of all those things, because they may be resolved elsewhere, but we just may not be aware of it. I may have resolved many things in this lifetime that I'm not aware of.
Right. I do remember you speaking at a previous time about experiencing between lives.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain a little bit of what you have experienced of between life space?
Sure. What I experience with it is, well, there's another method that's known as life between lives, which I am not a practitioner of. I have gone through that process probably about a dozen times. And the first time that I went through it, I was taken to the planning stage for this life as Daniel. It was really cool. Now,
is that the one with all the monitors?
Yeah, with all the monitors
Okay.
in the blue hue room. And so what I saw was this, it felt almost like an old computer bank from the 1950s or 60s. Now, this is probably just a subconscious projection in a way that I can understand it, because it would kind of be pathetic if on the other side, that was the extent of the technology that we're above, which I can't. Anyways, I digress. I walked into this room and there was this presence sitting in a chair, a presence that felt like it had been there for millennia. Just this old, grumpy presence. Pushing a button, showing someone potential of lives, pushing a button. This is what you're going to take. Push a button, move on. So what I saw was 9 different lives that I could choose from. I believe it was 9. And they were in order of, we'll just call it easiest to hardest, what I would have to endure in any of those given lives, and what the lesson was, where I would be. I was going to forget a couple of them. One was in England, the life of a dud. I'll never forget that. One was in Germany. I've lived lives in England where I wasn't a dud. And you guys have what, 60 million people over there, and they're not all duds. One just happened to be a dud. One in Germany as a psychologist. One in the Andes as like a spiritual practitioner. One in Texas as a revolutionary. One in the Yukon, I believe, but I believe that was a short life. They lived till maybe 2, I believe it was. One in Thailand, which was a horrific life. That was at the bottom of the list, indicating it was the most difficult. I want to say there was one in New York. I can't remember what that one was. Then there was my life. I think I've counted out 8 there, maybe 9. If there's another one, I can't remember it right now. And in a linear time sense, they were all within about a 15-year birth time. Because of my last life in a linear sense, I believe I passed away in 1977 or 1978. And I believe the first one was 1982. The first one was born, I think. It's been a couple years since I had that session, but it went life by life, showing what the lesson was, what the contribution. So the one in England, I can't remember what the dud life was. I don't think there was much to it. The one in Germany had to do with matters of the heart and this person making a strong contribution to the field of psychology and really living it up. Now, you can come to your own conclusions what I mean by saying that when it comes to matters of the heart.
Sure.
Yeah. The one in the Andes was just about that spiritual pursuit. The one in Texas was about a radical transformation of going from one set of beliefs to another. I can't remember what the one in New York was. And Thailand was about just having a horrible, 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 horrible upbringing, but then there being a transformation that happened after the Saturn return. And so I'm blanking on some, but then there was my life. Being in Los Angeles, like the question was once asked of me, well, why did you pick this life? I believe that the consciousness that I'm in chose this one right now because it had the potential for the greatest reach. But that's, I think, a very singular way of looking at it, which is I believe that I'm in all of those lives right now. I believe that that's possible that my consciousness has just split off into multiple vessels to carry out whatever needs to be carried out. I'll tell you this, if that's the case, that really pisses me off because I'm aware of my circumstances right now and the karma that I believe I'm working on, doing my best not to create additional karma that will need to be dealt with. I have no control over them. Why do I have to be responsible for their karma, their choices? I don't want to have to deal with that. That's not cool. Yeah, I was that guy who never liked it when you're in elementary school and the whole class gets punished because one idiot does something. Like, it's a bunch of bullshit. So that's my quarrel with this potential feeling that I have with regards to being in all those lives is really, come on. But maybe there's something universal at play where there's going to be a loophole where I don't have to deal with that. Maybe. A guy can dream, right?
I think regardless of whether we're a soul split into many bodies at the same time or simply individuals who have to experience other people's energy in general, we are still all connected, right? And we're all kind of experiencing the consequences of each other's actions. We do experience pain and retributions based on how the people in our lives make choices and do things that we don't have any control over either. So whether that's playing out on a multiple soul level at the same time or just interacting with people in this plane.
Yeah. I hear you.
Okay, next question. If someone does happen to have a past life regression where they do see someone that they know and they know they have karma with that person, karma in quotes for lack of a better, more secular word, I guess, but they know in this life that that person is not up to healing that karma or working on those wounds. Do you have advice for how that person can deal with that or move on from that themselves?
I don't think it's something that will never weigh on you. I believe to a certain extent it will, because for me, the people who I see in my life who are reluctant to make those changes, it's hard to be in a position where I'm so often dealing with so many people who actively work on themselves and I see the potential for it.
Yeah.
And then to see those in my life who have no desire to do that because they're afraid. It's difficult because I'm not saying that I have all the answers or that I know that my way is the right way. I believe it is, but I don't know it. But it's hard to not want to go tape their eyelids open with duct tape. Metaphorically speaking, of course.
Sure.
I don't want that karma of what that would be to duct tape someone's eyes open or eyelids open. But as time has gone on, because I've been a practitioner now since 2016, so it's been a couple of years, I think it's gotten easier for me because I believe I have a deeper understanding that sometimes it's not everyone's path to come to that understanding, or maybe their lesson in this life is not to do the work. It's to contribute in the way that they are supposed to contribute and that they're supposed to go through their lives in a state of constant fear. It doesn't make it easier overall to then be on the receiving end of that. But I believe that it's helped me develop a deeper sense of compassion for everyone in their own individual journey. But it's not something that's completely out of my peripheral, though. It's something that I would say still weighs on me to a certain extent, if I'm being honest.
Would it be in the ballpark to say that it's part of a practice of acceptance and forgiveness?
I do believe that that's in that ballpark. And what I try to tell myself also is, I mean, of course, I'm imagining the karmic components. You know, as we were talking about, I believe this was before we press record, that I don't often see people that I know in my own regressions, but it has happened. So with some of these people, I do believe I understand some of the karma. And what really pisses me off is that I see myself doing the work, and then I don't want to have to do this again with them.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that really bothers me. So the way that I try to look at it, I wouldn't say it's through rose-colored glasses or delusional goggles. Maybe I'm not completely reliant on them to do the work. Maybe it's a matter of the lessons that I learn or what I accomplish, my own growth, and that maybe we'll have to come back again, but it won't be in the same role because I've learned my lesson. So they're going to have to find someone else to be their patsy for that one.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so painful because the value of interpersonal healing could just potentially be so beautiful, and you kind of miss out on that experience, at least with that person.
Mm-hmm.
So much of the modern like spiritual practice is so much on our personal power and personal responsibility, and that's absolutely totally a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But interpersonal relationship is so important too, and it's hard to meet when you're on different pages like that.
One of the expressions I've heard from one of these people is you can't teach well, they didn't say this verbatim, but the gist of it was you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Bullshit. Because I've had many clients who have been going to their golden hour dinners or getting their senior citizen discount for many years at this point, and just embarking on that journey to work on themselves. Why I feel that that's important for me to see that is because when I hear that sentiment put forward of you can't teach an old dog new tricks, I don't buy it.
Yeah.
Because I see that that's not the case. I see those people who have had a way of thinking for a very long time, and they've decided to make a change. Now, that doesn't mean I'm holding out hope for these other people,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't buy it when I hear it.
Yeah.
Because I feel that when we are around those people, sometimes because we have such a deep appreciation and caring for them, that we want to just blindly accept what they're saying. But I would say that my pushback has been significantly reduced in the last couple of years, because it's understanding not everyone is here to be helped, and not everyone wants, sometimes they just want to grow in their own way. And
yeah. All right, for the next one, I think we've answered this in a couple of different ways, but how has past life work basically changed your relationship to the present moment, your experience of it?
I'll go back to my very first regression to start with this one. One of the key things that I wanted to understand coming out of my first regression, which was 7 years ago, was I want to understand my autoimmune issues. Because of what I read about past life regression at that point, I believed that I was going to walk out of there healed. I naively believed that. And when I didn't walk out of there healed, surprisingly, I wasn't disappointed. My belief system has been so rigid because of my habit of clinging on to my belief of science, that I wouldn't allow space for having an experience like a past life regression prior to getting sick. And even at that point, it took me 6 years to do it, 7 years. I had to be pushed to that point. Now, before that regression, my illness was my identity, fully. That's the way I saw myself when I woke up in the morning, when I looked in the mirror. I was a sick person. Any decision I made was based off of being a sick person. It wasn't based off of limitations. It was based off of being a sick person. So when I walked out of that first regression, I was so moved by my experience that I was a firm believer in past lives. So by default, I believed in future lives. So I quite literally said to myself, these are the cards that I've been dealt this time around. How am I going to play them? Because next time it could be better or it could be worse. So now is all that matters. And I made the choice in that moment to no longer view myself as a sick person. My circumstances changed based off of that perception. Now, that didn't take away the reality of the situation, that I still had my limitations, but it just became, there were just some limitations. It wasn't because I was sick. They were just limitations that I had to live with. So I started viewing life through a different lens. Prior to that session, the thought of going out on a walk, it's like, I'm sure you know about the Spoonie method.
Yes.
The Spoonie method being you have a certain amount of spoons for each day, and these spoons are a metric of what you can do, like energy, right?
Yeah, spoon theory.
So washing dishes may be 3 spoons, or taking a shower may be 1. Taking a shower was never 1 for me. That was always
Try having long hair.
So going on a long walk, the way I viewed it before was, if I do this, there's going to be a recovery time. So I'm not going to do it. After my session, it became, if I do this, there's going to be a recovery time involved. So be it. I'm going on that walk. So it really became about being more present in the moment, not thinking about I wouldn't say what I was prohibited from doing, but just understanding that my actions will have, I don't want to go as far to say consequences, but that there's a cause and effect. But so be it. Because the truth was, I was going to be tired anyways, whether or not I was sitting in bed not walking or going on that walk. I was still going to have my same circumstances. Now, I understood that I couldn't go for a long distance run because that would just be stupid. I had to start moving forward and living my life a little more and be present in the moment, because these were the cards that I had been dealt this time around. So did I just want to be that sick person, or do I want to be that person who's going to wave my middle finger high and say, we're playing on my terms now. All right, give me your best shot. I think this also goes back to what I said in the previous episode, though. This doesn't discount the experience of anyone else who there may be severe limitations for other people, whereas my limitations may just be middle of the road limitations, we'll just say. So I don't want anyone listening to this to feel like they are not doing the right thing because of their limitations. Like, one of the things that really upsets me that I hear it in the spiritual community is that someone who got their legs cut off can magically grow new legs. I've heard this. I have actually heard this before from more than one person. Yeah. Now, is it possible? Yeah, I believe anything is possible other than the earth being flat. But I don't believe that everyone has the tools involved to grow a new set of legs. So if people are being fed, you can grow a new pair of legs if they've lost their legs, then they're going to feel like a failure if they don't have that capacity to do it. So that's why I don't want anyone listening right now to feel like, if you have health issues, you're like, well, Daniel did it, but I can't. So your circumstances are probably different than mine. So it's okay.
What you're saying is you're not rushing into situations that would cause you harm. Where, some people, the thresholds are different, but you were able to stretch in a way that wasn't as limited as you needed to be necessarily.
Exactly. It's like when I go places, if I'm going places with groups of people, I bring my car.
Yeah.
Because I may get to a point where I'm like, you know what, I'm hitting my limit and I can't be reliant upon someone else, whatever it may be. But it's accepting my circumstances, but not letting them define me.
Yeah. And I definitely want to echo the warning of the toxicity of a lot of spiritual practitioners who say, if you only had your energy aligned in some certain way, you would have perfect health and all the money and all the sex and all the wonderful things that you want in life. When you need a much more practical approach to life on earth that includes different levels of suffering and challenges, because you're not wrong for having those things. Those things are extremely human things to have.
And, one of the things that this is like it's a bit of a side note. I often question the things that I say out there publicly now. Because like with this conversation, am I being detrimental by saying to someone, look, you got limitations? Whereas you got other people out there saying the sky is the limit. Yeah, I believe the sky is the limit, but I believe that there are also wild cards and variables. And am I being detrimental to those people listening to what I'm saying by what I genuinely believe is just being real with them and being practical? Am I a hindrance to their potential healing because I'm saying, look, maybe it's possible? Like as a practitioner, I'm basically taught to say anything can be healed. Anything can be healed. Anything. And that's what I'm supposed to say. Anything can be healed. Anything can be addressed. You can have the life you want. Am I a miracle worker? No. No. I'm not going to say that to someone. I will say to them, I believe that you have the potential to be healed. But it's a matter of what you do with that information. Like when I walked out of that first session, I made a choice to look at the world through that lens and say, I am no longer going to be a victim of my circumstances. That's the choice that I made. I could have walked out of there with my head down saying, oh, well, my life is never going to amount to anything because this one session didn't cure me. Or I could have walked out of there saying, I'm Spartacus. I mean, I didn't see myself as Spartacus in that life, but I could have. I mean, that's what I could have said. Or I could have walked out there like, I'm fucking Zeus now. Well, let me put a comma there between fucking and Zeus. Yay.
I honestly think it's way more detrimental to have practitioners or people telling you that you are going to heal or whatever, because then when you don't, the self-blame and self-shame is tripled, quadrupled, and it gets even worse the longer you hear it and the more programs you try and the more practitioners tell you this, and you just feel worse and worse and worse. This has been a huge mental health challenge for me. Is I think talked about it a little bit in our Instagram live, was like all the ways that I tried to fix myself or figure myself out or figure out my life path so that I would be healed. Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that I don't believe I might be healed and recovered and have full health at some point in this life. But I think it's very damaging to ever place the blame on a patient or a client who hasn't achieved healing and say it's because of something they've done or something they haven't done. Because I think something that you're just so good at or well-versed in is reminding everyone that everyone is on their own path and has their own lessons and has their own journeys and has their own challenges. And I think it's extremely ignorant we have over sanitized our lives to assume that the default method should be no pain. Mm-hmm. When in reality, the default method is pain after pain after pain.
The way that I view my life now is that it's not going to be this way forever. As I said earlier, my health has improved over the years. I'm not in the same place that I was years ago. Now, I can't say for sure that's because it was a change of perspective. It could just be that was the way that it was supposed to be. But the way that I view it now is that this is my story now, but it will not be this way forever. There will come that day when I am fully healed and just fly into the moon and circling around it and there and back 17,000 times a day. But I also feel that if that doesn't happen, I don't want to say it's not the end of the world, because of course I want it to happen, but no time will have been lost with that outlook, because I'm not sitting waiting for it to happen. I still go to therapy every week. I still actively work on myself. So that's what happens at the end of the day, is I've made an effort to work on myself. And karmically, I believe that means that I'm crossing things off the list, mm-hmm. breaking patterns that have been part of my soul's journey for many a lifetimes. So it's okay, but I'm going out swinging, but also mm-hmm. not feeling bad about myself if it doesn't come sooner. Yeah. Of course I want more. But I don't want to let those people get to me anymore. The ones mm-hmm. who say, it's your fault. mean, you said it so beautifully. It's your fault that you're not healed.
Yeah.
You can kiss my ass. Not you, them. And it's still, I think this is where reflection comes into play, because I believe it was Colin's video that you first saw me on, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I often think this is where I shouldn't be so stuck in the past. That was one of the most embarrassing interviews that I've had.
I loved it.
Because I went off on I went off on that episode. Now, what I didn't say at the time was I had a session with a spiritual practitioner a few days before that. Someone who was perpetuating a lot of these ideas. These ones about, this and that and this and that. And it angered me. I'm going to call a spade right now. I was angry to see that because I saw the spiritual bypassing that they were doing.
Yeah.
The issues that they didn't want to look at. As a result, I believe that they were bringing a lot of people down with them because they were effective communicator. And of course, I will never, ever say who this person is. That's just not what I'm. Yeah. You may know them, you may not. Everyone listening right now, you may know who this person is, you may not. You may have seen their face before, maybe you haven't. But I was so angered by that. And it stuck with me. And then I saw a part of myself come out that was ugly. Not during the session, but during the interview with Colin. There's something I said that it still rubs me the wrong way. Like, I became very pompous. We were talking a bit about shadows and shadow work. And I made the statement of, I'm going to show you how it's done. Now, who I was really speaking to was that person.
Yeah.
I chose the absolute wrong platform to do that on because, Colin has a huge audience. But I was so worked up by that. But while being in the session with this person and just being so hyper-focused on helping and encouraging them to look at these things. And then to see them go out there and spew a bunch of bullshit after. Of course, they didn't mention me or anything like that. But they're back to talking about this or that or this, perpetuating those ideas. So I bring this up because I often think about that interview, but not through the past lens. Not beating myself up for it. Because that's what the old me would have done. Would have held on to that. It's a matter of looking at the situation and impartially observing it and saying, why did I do that? Why did I get worked up? And then saying, when this happens in the future, because of course, I'm going to encounter this in the future. I'm going to work with these spiritual influencers who are full of shit. But when they're working with me, they're someone I'm there to help. And then I'm going to see them go out there and spew again because they are rewarded for it by society. And how am I going to compose myself? And here's another thing, me saying that this will happen again. There's that crew out there that's going to say, oh, because you're saying it, it's going to happen. No, I'm saying this is going to happen because these are the types of people that are out there. I could put myself in a hole and sure it wouldn't happen. But the reality of us putting ourselves out there, and I include you in this one because you're putting yourself out there more and more, is the bigger our audiences grow, we are not going to be invisible. That's just not the case. And I can't screen everyone that I work with. It's a matter of evaluating the mistakes that I believe I've made, but how do I rectify those? And how do I act and compose myself differently in the future?
And I want to come to your defense a little bit through that, in that you caught yourself very quickly in that interview and immediately started looking at where you had, whatever had started and shown up to learn what was being taught in this moment and own up to what you were doing. And like I had said before, that's what I thought was very endearing about you and knew that I wanted to see more of what you were doing, because I have been surrounded by a lot of bullshit for a long time. And it was like light coming through the clouds, being like, oh my gosh, someone who is actually owning their shit, like live, doing it in the moment. It was very refreshing to me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I hear every single word of it. And I wish, while it was authentic, I wish that it was 100% authentic. And I believe that my motivation was in the right place. But I mean, so this is not me, right? Because it was not easy to do what I did, because I brought up some stuff that was, not very flattering to say about myself publicly. But I wish that my motivation was strictly out of the purity of the moment, as opposed to some of it deriving from a place of anger.
Yeah, but you're human.
Right. And as much as I wish I could have changed it, there's also nothing I would have changed about that moment, because it was a moment that I learned from. And even though it was one of the biggest platforms I've been on to date, I'm happy it wasn't on a bigger platform. It's good that
silver lining.
Right. I mean, sure, it got 8,000 views or whatever it is, but it's better than 80,000 views.
It's just practice.
Exactly. Like, that's all it is. It's practice. And it's learning from the past and seeing how to apply it to the future, while saying that was part of the past. Like, that's one of the things I often really try to hammer home to people who will say to me before a session, what if I see something I can't see, like I did something horrific? So it doesn't matter what you did, because it's not who you are now. Or if someone brings up something horrible that they've done in this life during the pre-session, and they're just carrying around so much guilt, say, I don't care that you did that. It does not matter, because it's who you are now that matters. You obviously have remorse for it. That's why you're bringing it up. It's something that's been weighing on you. It doesn't matter what you did. You want to be a better person now. Now, of course, there are always going to be these asterisks that are next to those remarks, which you can fill in the blanks for whatever those may be. But largely, I say, if someone is willing to become a better person, then we should allow them to become a better person and not hold their past misdeeds against them.
Yeah.
And I just got to expand upon that statement too. Maybe it's just a matter of forgiveness in that moment, because sometimes things may have been done to someone where they can't forget it, but they can forgive for it. So, to allow ourselves to view that person through the person that they want to be, as opposed to the person that they were.
Got it.
Yeah.
I think that's, I have one more question.
Okay.
So you were brought to this world through getting your illness, becoming vulnerable and looking for answers. What do you think it would take to get more straight men doing more of this work on themselves? It seems to be. I mean, I've been in this industry a while, and it's still like 90% women doing a lot of the work. How do you think we could get the men folk involved?
I mean, I made that statement in jest by saying me, but I'm going to stick by it. I think it's me and other people like me who, I had a session earlier this week with a husband and wife on 2 separate days. So I'll tell everyone who's listening to this podcast right now, while most of you may be the audience who loves to listen to this content, you're not the audience that I'm going for. I'm going for your boyfriend who's sitting in the seat right next to you on your road trip. Because I've already got you. You're already interested in this thing. But the second I start using lofty terms is the second when I lose that person in the passenger seat who has the potential to be introduced to these concepts in a way that's grounded. Because it's like I'm sitting here calling a spade, and that's what I believe males will respond to. It's not when they, oh, yeah, you can grow your legs back. They're out the door at that point. You could say the most insightful things for an hour after that, but you have lost them the second that you said you can grow your legs back. So I believe that it's going to take maybe not even just more practical males, but more practical females who are practitioners as well, who are out there speaking publicly by just saying, look, this is a belief and not a fact. I believe that that's also what males respond to is when they see it treated as fact, you've lost them. When I say to someone, when they say to me, will this work? I say, look, I believe it will, but it's up to you whether or not you want to allow the process to unfold. Whereas if I would say to a lot of these people, yes, it will work, I've lost them. I've lost them. So I brought up the husband and the wife because he's someone who was just coming around to these spiritual concepts, and they were on a road trip. And she was someone who had reached out to me. She was a referral who had reached out to me a few months ago. Ended up not booking at the time. But then her and her husband were on a road trip and they were listening to a podcast that I was on. Not mine, but just another one. It was spiritual shit.
It's so good. It's such a good podcast.
Oh, Aaliyah's amazing. By the way, anyone listening to this right now who listens to spiritual shit, Aaliyah, 100% authentic. What you see and what you hear with her is exactly what you get. She is not putting on a show at all. I've met spiritual practitioners who are putting on a show. Aaliyah is not one of them. Completely genuine. I bring her up too because she has one of the biggest spiritual podcasts in the world. So odds are a lot of you have heard of her already. 100% genuine though. So for the two on the road trip, they were listening to the episode and I came at it with my practical approach and it won him over because I was being real. Aaliyah brought up a concept that she had heard about. It was talking about reptilians or the Anunnaki controlling the reincarnation cycle. I'm like, that's bullshit. I mean, I didn't say it that way. It was just calling it out of saying, really, like, that's very simple-minded thinking. And, of course, not saying it to Aaliyah because she was just bringing up the concept. And even she said that it wasn't something that resonated with her, but it was just, yeah, I don't want to make it sound like she was on board with it.
Yeah.
But it won him over because it was just like, come on, that's really? Because I see statements like that being made as a place resonating from someone's own fear. The concept was, I'll very briefly talk about it, that the Anunnaki, which are a collective of aliens who are doing heinous things to the planet, which, look, I believe it is possible, again, believe that it is possible that we're being controlled in one way or another. I believe it's possible. I'm not saying that that's the way it is. Remember, anything but the earth being flat, I'm open to the possibility of. That they have controlled the reincarnation cycle. And by doing this, they are feeding off of our fear and they are causing all kinds of havoc in the world and are controlling every aspect of our lives so they can feed off of our fear. And my approach to that is, well, maybe, but it also just sounds like a way to not accept responsibility for what you need to do. Because if your view of the world is that there are these alien beings who are in control of every aspect of your life, then you're not going to look at your shadows. You're not going to need to work on whatever it is that you're going to need to work on because you're going to say there's no point in working on it because they are in control. There's no way I can break it. So my response to that is, well, then break the control. If they're feeding off of your fear and your negative emotions, then eliminate those negative emotions by spending many lifetimes getting rid of them and facing your shit. That's how you punch them in the face. So I think it's that approach. I think more male and female voices are needed out there that will resonate with the person in the passenger seat. I've already got everyone who's on board with these concepts. They're not going to be turned off by anything I'm saying. I mean, maybe things I'm saying that aren't spiritual. I may say some stupid things that will offend them. I want to connect with their boyfriends or their husbands, the people who they want to get in the fold, because that's what I hear from so many married women. Or just women who are in relationships, is that they wish that their significant other wouldn't treat them like shit when it came to their spiritual beliefs, that they would get involved, that they would just want to talk about it. So that's what I feel is needed, is more voices who will connect with them on their level. People who are willing to call a spade a spade. Does that answer?
Thank you for being out there. Yeah, thank you for being out there and doing that work. And I hope it does resonate and bring.
Thank you. Me too.
Bring some more of that in. Yeah, definitely needed.
Well, I think it's time. Oh, can I hop in as host again?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think it's time to wrap up right now. But just thank you so much for doing this. This has been fun. This has been the first episode where it's been an Ask Daniel. I've had a couple questions asked me on other episodes, but this is fun. This is fun to be in the passenger seat.
I had so many questions.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for answering them and taking the time. It's been so much fun for me.
Me too. Thank you for this. And where can everyone find you?
My website is jennysrp.com and I'm on Instagram, jennysrp and jennysrp videos, and happy to connect.
And what are your offerings?
I do video editing and tarot and astrology readings as well, and figuring things out as I go. So I might have even more when you look me up.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you and just you being you and being raw and real. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Daniel. You too. I really enjoyed it.
Yay. Fellow time travelers, your journey through time awaits you. Just want to thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. And if you're interested in discovering who, when, and where you have been throughout time, and you'd like to book a session with me, just go ahead and send me a message on Instagram at The Past Life Regressionist, or you can reach me through my website, yourpastliferegressionist.com.